those of you who have attended this retreat in the past, you know that the first day, usually Swami Viditatmananji inaugurates the camp, and then he takes the whole hour also. But he is not able to come this time. And so I saw him in Rishikesh and I said, Swamiji will miss you. He said, okay, write down something you can read. I said, no, that won't be as much fun as you saying it yourself. And so he has made a small video blessing this retreat. So we'll start with that. We'll look at it and then there he is.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I'm happy that Swamini Swatma Vidyananda Ji is conducting this retreat on Panchadashi, chapter 10, in Nataka Deepa Prakaranam. I know that Swamiji is a very learned teacher of Vedanta. She expounds Vedanta in a very easy way for the students to understand and imbibe. She herself is a very mild, sober person, and therefore that aspect of her personality naturally expresses itself in the teaching, and therefore she is very popular with the Vedantic students. It will be a pleasure for all of you to study the Nataka Deepa Prakaranam of Panchadashi. As the very title suggests, Nataka Deepa Deepa means a lamp. Nataka is the theatre, a lamp in the theatre. The famous chapter, very famous the analogy that Swami Vidyaranya Ji gives, how the lamp in the theatre illumines everything that goes on the stage. The dancer comes on the stage, presents her performance and retreats. Before her, of course, the accompaniments had already come, and then after she departs, they also leave. And when the show is over, one by one, the audience also leaves. At the end, again, the theatre is completely vacant or empty. So this is the analogy that sage Vidyaranya Ji has used to explain how our mind is comparable to the dancer. Just as the dancer shows different moods on her face, so also our mind shows different moods, different emotions, even different impulses, and how ultimately when the dancer retreats from the stage and also the accompaniments leave the stage again, the whole theatre is again empty. So how the mind, which presents different moods and attitudes, also when it withdraws, leaving the theatre of our personality vacant. So that is, but still in all of this, the lamp continues to shine. The lamp illumines the stage as well as the dancer when she is there, and the lamp also illumines the stage when the dancer and the accompaniments have departed. Similarly, our mind goes through various stages: the waking, the dream, the deep sleep, the stages of the mind. And the lamp, which is our own self, the consciousness, that is illuminator as well as a witness, uninvolved witness, kutastha, changeless witness. The moods on the face of the dancer, they keep on changing, but the lamp, without undergoing any change, illumines those moods, those changes. The dancer displays various movements of her limbs. Again, the lamp, without undergoing any change, illumines those movements. So also the self, which is a lamp of consciousness, illumines all the states of the mind, various moods of the mind, in the waking state, in the dream state, the deep sleep state, in all the various states, itself remaining ever unchanged. And thus, from these various states of the mind which keep on changing, we are given the lesson of the self, the consciousness that is the illuminator and that is changeless, and that is ourself. And what we have to know, how the self of the consciousness remains unchanged, devoid of any modifications or transformations, and witnesses the waking, the dream, the deep sleep. You can call the self of the consciousness, sometimes they call it the fourth. The waking is number 1, the dream is number 2, the deep sleep is number 3. And so, in counting, sometimes the witness, the illuminator, is called fourth, but he's not fourth, he's the only one. And this consciousness or the self alone assumes different costumes and becomes a waker, becomes dreamer, different deep sleeper. And when all the costumes are given up, then what we have is a self, consciousness, unaffected by costumes, unaffected by all the changes taking place in the theatre, on the platform. And changeless witness of all the 3 states of the mind is what the Nataka Deepa is. The lamp in the theatre stands for the changeless conscious self, illumining all the changes, the presence of the mind in the waking and dream states, and the absence of the mind in the deep sleep state. So bhava and abhava, presence and absence, both of these are illumined, itself remaining free from the notions of bhava and abhava. Abhava, the absence is there with reference to presence. But that which is constantly there, it eliminates both the bhava and abhava. So that is the nature of ourselves. Consciousness, kutastha, changeless, witness, illuminator, and that's what we recognize as our own nature in the midst of all the changes. As the Bhagavad Gita says, upaddrashta anumanta cha. Upaddrashta, upa means that which is in the proximity, the proximate witness, upamanta, and the witness. So, thus, he as though permits everything, permits the mind to do what it wants to do. Anumanta itself being the proximate witness. So, this is what is explained in this chapter with a very beautiful imagery and in great detail by sage Vidyaranya, the author of Panchadashi. And I'm sure all of you will enjoy these discourses and slowly learn to identify with the changeless, which is in and through all changes, all the changes that is distinct from the changing mind and everything. And that's what you and I are. And that's what I pray that in course of these classes, that you get the clarity and you develop the ability to recognize your changeless nature and own up that nature. Om.
ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So, we have yet one more retreat. This time studying what is called the Panchadashi. Panchadashi is a highly erudite text written by one Swami Vidyaranya to the kings of the Vijayanagar Empire. Very learned and the author of many books that have survived to this day. One of them, of course, Panchadashi, which means she who has 15 chapters. Why she? It's knowledge. Knowledge is feminine. Shruti, feminine. What else do we have? Upanishad, feminine. Brahma Vidya, feminine. And if you say, I'm not interested in knowledge, what are you interested in? What is somebody who says, I'm not interested in knowledge, what might they be interested in? Show me at least one sign of life. What might they be interested in? Wealth. Yes, wealth. Very good. If they are interested in wealth, that's also feminine pursuit. Lakshmi. Wealth, Lakshmi. Abundance, Lakshmi. Happiness, Lakshmi. happiness derived from so many areas. 8 areas are talked about. All that is Lakshmi. Dhana Lakshmi, Dhanya Lakshmi, Santana Lakshmi, happiness derived from progeny. Santana Lakshmi, Dhairya Lakshmi, Veera Lakshmi, all these things, many, many forms of abundance. Very important pursuit, and that pursuit is also what? Feminine. These two ladies, divine ladies, between them have divvied up all the pursuits of humanity, of humankind. So, Panchadashi, this she, Brahma Vidya, which has 15 chapters, limbs. So this is one text, we'll come back to this text. One text he authored, Swami Vidyaranya. The other one, famous one, is which we studied in one of the 10-day retreats a few years back. It's called Jivan Mukti Viveka. How the vision of Vedanta is for right here, right now, for a transformation right here, right now. The vision of Vedanta does not promise an afterlife where in some distant future one is going to be happy, one is going to be satisfied, one is going to be free. The freedom here, what's the point of being free after death? For somebody who is yearning for something right now, for a hungry person, if you say heaven is full of food, what will happen? They will send you to heaven. They'll get angry and send you to heaven. That is what will happen. Because when is the hunger being experienced? Right here, right now, not later on in some other realm. So Jivan Mukti means freedom right here, right now. Right now alone is the freedom. Right here is the freedom. And so therefore, there is a nice text, a manuscript called Jivan Mukti Viveka, discrimination about what this freedom from what? Samsara, of course. Some sorrow or the other, that is what is samsara. Freedom from samsara, how to get it right here and right now. What does that mean? And what kind of a lifestyle does it entail? And then finally, who can get it? And here is where he excels himself, our Swami Vidyaranya, by saying, right at the beginning, in the first page itself, he says, both men and women are entitled to moksha. Because moksha is dependent upon adhikaritvam, meaning the qualifications. And if anybody has the qualifications, they get the moksha. It's not that you have to be some gender or some particular age or anything like that. And so that is Jivan Mukti Viveka. And as though this was not enough, these two big magnum opuses, he wrote a grammar book, very beautiful grammar book called Madhaviya Dhatu Vritti. And very nicely explained grammar, Sanskrit grammar. His name was Madhava before he became a sannyasi, his name was Madhava. And so he wrote this Madhaviya Dhatu Vritti. And so you can see from these writings how learned he was. And the Panchadashi, of course, is his magnum opus, you can say. But then the Panchadashi also, it is widely believed that it is a co-authored work. Swami Vidyaranya wrote the first 5 chapters, and then his Guru Bhai, meaning somebody who studied with him from the same teacher, wrote the other 10 chapters. Chapters 6 to 15 was written by his friend, another Swami, also called Bharati Tirtha, nothing to do with the reigning pontiff in Sringeri right now, of the same name. But this Bharati Tirtha was the friend of Swami Vidyaranya, and he wrote the last 10 chapters. So then, which chapter are we studying? 10. Who wrote it? Bharati Tirtha. Then why are we talking about Swami Vidyaranya? And why, question number 1, and besides, question number 2, then why are not we studying one of the earlier chapters? If we want an understanding into what Swami Vidyaranya is all about, we should study one of his chapters. And also, why is it not like, if it's a co-authored work, then both the authors in alphabetical order, okay, let Bharati Tirtha come first, B for Bharati, and then V for Vidyaranya can come later. Why isn't that the case? That is not the case, because this Bharati, whoever this Bharati Tirtha was, the colleague, friend of Swami Vidyaranya, was very, very happy for it to be published in Swami Vidyaranya's name. He didn't want a piece of the action, the piece of the credit. Pulitzer Prize, you keep it, it's okay. Because in any case, whatever we say, this is something beautiful about knowledge and everything here. Whatever we say as far as Brahma Vidya is concerned, it is never new. Not at all new. Never, ever, ever, ever new. And why is it not new? Because it is already been, it's like been there and done that with a vengeance. It's already been there and done that. Oh, I think Atma is Brahman. Yay, I discovered something. No, been there and done that. Oh, look, there are 3 states that I go through every day. Right now, I'm awake, but soon I'll be asleep. And then, after I'm asleep, I go into one more state. And what is that? No, dreaming. So then you're already deeply asleep. So, then I go into a dream state. And then what? And then I wake up again. So that means I have 3 states that I experience daily, and then you know what's really cool? I'm there in all of them. I am the continuity. I am the inhering thread that unifies all these states. In fact, no state is separate from me, but I am not any one state. Yippee! Not so fast. That too has already been done. In fact, it has been done in the Mandukya Upanishad in great detail. The entire Mandukya Upanishad is all about the various states. And how you, the truth of you, is not a state. Then you say, oh, look, but you know what else is very cool, which I just discovered? What did you discover? The pot, there should be one around somewhere. Indeed, there is. And the pot, which is the effect, and what is the cause of this pot? Clay. Clay. So the pot, the effect, is non-separate from the cause, just as the pot is non-separate from clay. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that so? Am I not so clever? Keep quiet. This is the bread and butter of the Upanishads, and this is the opening lines of the Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6. So whatever you can say about Atma, whatever you can say about Atma Vidya, whatever you can say about Brahman, Brahma Vidya, all that, mind you, is one and the same, has had this effect of been there, done that. In fact, it has stymied many a Vedanta teacher. Our very own Swami Paramarthananda ji, a long time ago, he was teaching, and then he had this sudden insight while teaching. He said, this was not explained to me at all. I've come on this myself. I don't think Swami Dayananda ji, I don't think Pujya Swami ji explained this at all. Oh, this is really cool. I'm a Vedanta innovator. Thinking that, he went home, he went to his flat, and after he went to his flat, got up on the attic because he wanted the old books. When he had been taught that Upanishad, he got that, opened it to the page where that verse he was teaching, and he found that Swami Dayananda ji had already made the point which he had made. He had as though discovered it anew, but really speaking, it's all there. So any authorship to claim is at best a foolish, really silly endeavor. You can't really claim authorship, because this knowledge is given by Ishvara. It is not a product of anybody. It's not a product. It is not a, what is that called? It is not because, it's not manufactured by human agency. It's discovered, and you can't really take credit for its discovery, because it's discovered numerously by various people all over the place. So you can't take credit for the discovery at all. Bharati Tirtha, knowing all this, said, you take the credit, doesn't matter. And so therefore he was very happy for it to be published as a contiguous work, as a work that was totally together, contiguous, and called as Panchadashi. It has an interesting structure. The first 5 chapters end with the word Viveka. Panchakosha Viveka, Tattva Viveka, Jiva Ishvara Viveka. What does Viveka mean? Discrimination. Very good. Viveka is discrimination. So various kinds of Viveka from chapter 1 to chapter 5 are talked about. And when we have discrimination, then what happens? The next quintet, so this is 3 quintets, so the next quintet, chapter 11 to chapter 10 to 14, all of them end in Deepa, Tripti Deepa, Nataka Deepa, Kutastha Deepa. What does Deepa mean? Light. So the light of knowledge is, one is blessed with the light of knowledge. When? When is one blessed with the light of knowledge? One is blessed with the light of knowledge only after having Viveka, discrimination. Then the last 5 chapters end in the word Ananda, Brahmananda, Vidyananda, Vishayananda, like this. So then that also makes a nice little logical segue. So first I have Viveka. As a result of Viveka, what happens? I have Deepa, enlightenment. And so why should I get enlightened? Why should I understand my own nature? Why should I understand this? So that I can have what? Ananda. Not have Ananda, I understand I am Ananda. Very nice it is, beautiful. And so, this is the particular structure which shows the way in which it proceeds. So we will be taking from the middle segment, Deepa. But why the 10th chapter? Because it's short, okay? Yeah, no other reason. We could have also done the 7th chapter, but that has 294 verses. All right? As opposed to 28 verses or whatever this has. How many verses are there? 26 verses. So, therefore, there's always a trick to the teacher choosing chapters. Short is good for small retreats like this one. So, therefore, this chapter is chosen because it is short, because it will serve us well during this time that we have together. And it's also chosen because it has this, as Swamiji said in the introduction, this unique analogy of the lamp. So the lamp is there, and then it's very, very interesting. So the lamp is a forgotten necessity. Without the lamp, there is no show. So it's not a daytime show. What kind of a show is it? It's a nighttime show. Okay? It's a nighttime show, and so you can imagine it's a nice warm evening, and everybody is sitting in an amphitheater waiting for the dance and the music to start. There is a pillar in the auditorium, and aloft that pillar we have lot of oil is put, and cloth is dipped in the oil and lighted up to be a very big firebrand. This was the practice in the olden days. And with this firebrand, it would light everything. The audience would be lit up. So we are not thinking of a spotlight. We are thinking of a light that lights up everything. So the audience would be lit up, and the same light would also light up the orchestra and the dancer. And then the show would go on. And at some point, the dancer finishes her last dance, Tillana it is called. After the last dance, it's over. There are, even in the Western orchestra, like music orchestra and all, there are some final pieces. Then after that they come out, everybody, they bow, everybody claps, then they go back in, then people are still clapping, then they come out again. What for, I haven't understood, but then they come out again, people clap some more, they go do like this 3-4 times. But then that show is also over. And the show is over, what happens? The audience goes home, one by one, no more audience. The dancer has left the stage, the live orchestra has left the stage, and anybody else who is there putting certain things away, packing stuff, they have also gone. How do we know they are gone? How do we know that they arrived? How do we know who is in the audience? How do we know that, oh, there is a celebrity watching this? How do we know that this is the person who is the dancer? All because of this one lamp that does its job. When? All the time. That lamp is the lamp of consciousness, the light of consciousness, which illumines everything, both the inner Jagat. One's own inner Jagat, it illumines, and then it also illumines what? The outer Jagat. And it illumines both bhava, the presence of objects, and abhava, the absence of objects. Now mind you, the Natakadipa, the theatre lamp analogy, only occupies about 6 verses in the 26 odd verses of the whole chapter. Yet it is called Natakadipa because that is the rallying example that rallies forth and brings together the entire chapter. It brings together the entire chapter, so therefore it is called Natakadipa. And so we'll be looking at this verse by verse starting tomorrow. And the Panchadashi itself has an invocation to the Guru, which is very beautiful, which we'll chant today. I don't have it written down. So we can pretend we are in ancient India and we do what is called call and repeat, respond. Namah Shri Shankarananda. I hope you had dinner because it is not sounding like it. It's not sounding like an opening verse. It's sounding more like a funeral dirge. Namah Shri Shankarananda. Much better. Guru Padambu Janmane. Guru Padambu Janmane. Namah Shri Shankarananda. Guru Padambu Janmane. Savilasa Mahamoha. Savilasa Mahamoha. Graha Grasaika Karmane. Graha Grasaika Karmane. Savilasa Mahamoha. Graha Grasaika Karmane. Graha Grasaika Karmane. Very beautiful chant. An invocatory prayer called Mangalacharanam. Mangalacharanam means auspicious behavior before writing the text. And there are many reasons the prayer is written, primarily so that it will survive all the bugs, because it used to be written on leaves. Termites are all there. If you start to publish a book, the termites get very happy. Ooh, home for me, my descendants, everybody. Wonderful. So it could go that way. It could have been assimilated by the termites. Sometimes people kept goats in their courtyard, and the goats also thought, this is our food, goat food. And like that, it was dependent upon so many hidden variables, whether the book would see the light of day or not. And even if it saw the light of day, why will they go to the shop and pick up your book? When there are 10,000 books in the shop. Oh, because I paid them to keep it right in the front. Even then, why would they pick up your book? They could pick up so many people's books. But somehow they picked up your book. Some grace operating over time. Perhaps it's the prayer. And so the prayer is the most important part of a work. And the prayer is sometimes to the Ishta Devata, the Bhagavan in the form of the whatever deity of desire that you have, or it is in the form of the prayer to the Guru, or to even Atma, prayer to the Atma also. Like Adi Shankara's prayer in the Taittiriya Upanishad, one of the prayer is to the Atma. And so there are many kinds of prayers. This one happens to be an invocation of the Guru, because of whom this knowledge was gained. Remember, we just had a nice talk about how nothing is original about Brahma Vidya. It is given, and then it is received, and then it is shared. And so, therefore, the Guru becomes a central figure in the gaining of this knowledge, because without the Guru there is no knowledge. And so, he talks about his Guru so that we can be impressed by his Guru. And why should we be impressed by his Guru? We don't even know if he's in the body or not. We should be impressed by his Guru so that we can be impressed by him. And he's not interested in us being impressed by him. He is interested in us being impressed by Brahma Vidya. But more often than not, one is only interested in that book when one knows the author. So therefore, he is given the authorship to the Guru so that we can see what a fine work it is. So it starts with Namaha. Surrender. Salutations. Unto whom? Shankarananda was the Guru's name. Namah Shri Shankarananda. And then what kind of Shankarananda? Shriya Yukta Shankarananda. The one who is blessed with abundance. Abundance means what? Compassion. Abundance means largesse in the heart. Abundance means no scarcity mentality. These are all lakshanas. These are all characteristics of someone who has assimilated this knowledge. Abundance means there is nothing at all that is scarce. There is no shortage. For this Shankarananda, for whom there is no shortage. Shortage of words to share this knowledge, shortage of buddhi to assimilate this knowledge. And so this Namah Shri Shankarananda. Who is this Shankarananda? Guru. He is the Guru. And what kind of a Guru? Padambu Janmane. Padambu Janman is the word. Padambu Janmane. What is Pada? Feet. And what is Ambu? Water. Ambu is water. Feet, his feet are born of water. What is born of water? Mosquitoes. We are not talking of mosquitoes, we are simply talking of toes. Okay? Yeah. What is born of water? Lotus. Lotuses are born of water. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane. So the namaskara is directed towards the feet of this Bhagavan in the form of Guru. Guru is always seen as Bhagavan. So this is directed to the feet, and then what happens? And then the feet are seen as lotuses. So to the lotus feet of the Guru, Namaskar. And that is just the little bit of the first line. The second line gets even better. We'll see that in the morning class tomorrow. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.